First story. OP cut ties with their family. Her narcissistic parents took her sire into their house and assured him he would have a place in their house, whatever happened. My parents never should have had kids, and my psychologist agrees. All of us offspring of theirs have attempted self-harm at some point in our lives. I'm the only one still living at home with them, unfortunately. Only one of us wants a relationship with our parents, and that is through a lot of subjugation of their needs. They have a history of being abusive in almost all ways. I was expelled from high school, so my mom strangled me with a car seatbelt and punched me. My dad pinned me down and threw me off the chair I was sitting on after an argument. They demand my funds for bills because they spend all theirs on paying off debts from before I was born. The final straw for me is what I've discovered this week. When I was 14, my parents allowed my 16-year-old boyfriend to move in so that he could go to college here. Things went downhill fast. He would have a panic attack that looked like a seizure when I tried to compromise with him. He would have nightmares that would cause him to lash out, scratch, and punch. He never wore a condom and would remove it during the act. He cheated on me twice. Years later, when I broke up with him, I was 17 by this time. My parents still allowed him to live with us and still let him sleep in the same bed as me. Due to that, he would often grope me while I slept, and I'd often awake to him doing stuff to me. This escalated, and he eventually sawed me. He waited for a day when I was unwell and had been losing my voice the day prior. I couldn't make a sound. I eventually told a teacher at high school. With his support, I told my parents. They did nothing. When college rolled around, I saw my escape and tried to get away from him and my parents. I got onto my chosen subject with no problems at all. But then he applied and also got onto my course. I freaked and told him to apply to a better college and researched courses to find one better than my own. He agreed and went to another college, thankfully. However, my parents scolded me for this decision, calling it selfish and unfair. I eventually revealed what happened after a lot of internal struggles. They both hardly reacted at all. My parents helped him move to college. And the next day we had my celebratory going away meal. They spent the majority saying how much they'd miss him, and revealed they had told him he was always welcome back. Fast forward. My studies got interrupted by COVID, so I'm back at home. One of my siblings revealed that my parents didn't believe me about him. This enraged me and caused me to spiral mentally. I was put on medication to prevent killing myself. Fast forward again to this week. I was recommended by my ex on Facebook, by two mutual friends between us, my parents. I got suspicious, so when my mom next left her phone unattended, I checked on Messenger. My mom had been continuing contact with him. I no longer feel anything. I'm numb. I've been trying to move out with the support of my therapist, but things are going slowly due to the ongoing COVID situations, as well as my finances being constantly drained by my parents. I'm going abroad to stay with my sibling and his spouse for a while until I can figure out what to do. I just wanted to talk about it, so I know I'm not crazy for hating my parents now. Update. To quickly recap my last post. My parents let my 16-year-old boyfriend move in when I was 14, and among a lot of issues, I was sawed by him. I confided in my mom, but she did nothing. Fast forward to now, and I searched through her phone because I didn't trust that she removed my ex like she told me. And of course, she hadn't. But worse, she was still telling him he was welcome in our house, and that both my parents were always there for him. The middle sibling, who basically raised me through our parents' abuse, advised me to try approaching them about the situation. I didn't believe it would be of any use, but I found myself stuck with Dad for a day, so I tried. He said he understood where I was coming from when saying they should have done more, but that he wouldn't get involved and that I needed to talk to Mom alone. My sibling said the same, but after finding those messages, my thoughts towards Mom were pretty violent, so I went and stayed with my friend for the whole of August. He was the only one I confided in besides my mom, and he didn't understand either of my parents' motives either. Eventually, I felt ready to address the issue with my mom. I took her out for coffee, and she started a volatile argument with an old man for sitting in her seat. She went back to the car and cried, and I got the old man to come and apologize to her solely to put her in a better mood for the conversation. I explained that all to the old man, and he was incredibly understanding. I started the conversation by asking her why she thinks me and my ex broke up. She said that my ex was coercive, and that she had been learning about coercive relationships, which is rich. And while I agreed to a degree, I reiterated the issues I had with him, explained that the assaults and other situations were not accidental, and that it was very much a purposeful action. She kept saying she had no idea it was affecting me that much and all I can do is apologize. But then not actually apologizing. The conversation was going well until I apologized for going through her phone. She then bared her bottom teeth and hissed out, "You did what?" The conversation ground to a halt from then on. I reiterated that the kind of mistrust she had fostered in me was not born overnight, and that she should have done more to protect her son. She clearly wasn't hearing me and doubled down, saying she didn't trust me now either, saying, "I trusted you unconditionally before this." Which is dumb in my head anyway. She then didn't say anything productive, just hurtful. And I, of course, received no proper apology. After that, she drove me back to my friend's house in silence. I spoke briefly to my dad afterwards, and he said that whatever happens from now on happens, and that he would not be picking sides. I haven't heard from either of them since. So, I'm assuming I'm estranged now. Unfortunately, I am unable to get a place to live, so I'm just waiting and seeing what happens. Life is rough right now. Informative comment thread. Commenter. Punch your dad in the effing nose. That piece of SHT should be hunting the effer who sawed his kid. But nope. Send him this message. Not taking sides means letting the victim suffer. By not choosing sides, you already chose the abusers. He chose your mentally unsound psycho mom, who, frankly, needs to effing die. OP's reply. Honestly, I'd rather they both keep living and struggle to get by. I was paying a lot of their bills to the point where I'm now in debt due to financial pressure and abuse. They can lie in the bed they've made. Commenter. Are you sure your other siblings won't have to pay? Are you the youngest? And are they out of the house? Can you ask them for help? Nice, BTW. Can you see if there are laws to pile your debt on them? OP's reply. I'm the youngest and the only one left living with them. Besides the golden child from my mother's previous relationship who does coke and meth, and is an alcoholic, and her young son from her failed marriage. She moved in recently, and is just as bad, if not worse, than my mom. Once I'm safely situated in housing that they don't know the location of, I'm planning to take legal action. But as of right now, they know where I'm staying. Commenter. Make sure to call CPS too. That kid is going to be abused by all of them, now that you aren't a scapegoat anymore. Actually, call CPS ASAP. OP's reply. I will once I'm safe. I don't know what my parents would do to me if they knew I was the reason CPS came knocking. I'm also nervous about it because my grandpa is retired and was pretty high up in child protection in our district. Commenter. You think your gramps would tell on you? OP's reply. Less that. More that he'd find a way to get the kid back into the house. He walked out on dad. He's not exactly the model of a great parent. Commenter. And that piece of SHT is high up in child services. OP's reply. Unfortunately so. OP also mentioned in a comment that he's disabled. That's why he can't currently work. Second story. My entitled stepdaughter, who cut ties with me for her former drug addict mother, wants to reconcile after 6 years and invited me to her wedding only to receive inheritance from her grandpa. I 50F have 2 stepchildren, Sarah 23F and Mike 28M. I have been in their lives since Sarah was 2. Sarah's mom, Kate, was a drug addict. When Sarah was 3, she lost all her parental rights because of her addiction. Kate left after that and didn't have any contact until Sarah was 17. That's when Kate reached out to us, saying she was clean and wanted a relationship with the kids. My husband, Rob, was against this, but I wanted to give her a chance. We met with her, and it turns out she had been clean for a while, went to therapy, and had a decent job. Mike was against meeting her, and to this day he insists I'm his only mom and Kate is dead to him. Sarah was more open to Kate and resented Mike for rejecting her. I explained that Mike was older and witnessed Kate at her worst, so he has a different relationship with her. Sarah only remembers her after getting clean. This issue still causes a lot of resentment between them and me. Kate blamed me for Mike being hostile and resented me. It didn't help that Sarah started rejecting me for Kate. She stopped spending time with me, no matter what I did, and stopped calling me mom. I told her how hurt I was. She didn't have to choose. She could have us both. I never had an issue with Sarah and Kate. I only had an issue with being rejected. Sarah told me that, while she appreciated me at the end of the day, Kate was her and Mike's real mom. This crushed me. The final straw was when she didn't invite me to her high school graduation. I told her if she didn't want to be my daughter, then fine. From then on, she would be my husband's kid. Mike is in NC with her as well. 3 months ago, she came over with her fiancé, who we didn't even know existed, to invite us to their wedding. She said she wanted me at the bridal party, but I refused. I told her we hadn't had a relationship in years because of her wishes, and it felt uncomfortable for me to take on that role when I barely knew her now. She said she was sorry. I told her I wasn't interested. She got angry and said I had to be there because what are people going to think when both my brother and my dad's wife aren't there? Gramps' paternal grandfather is going to get pissed off too. I told her she clearly didn't want me there and only cared about appearances and being on her Gramps' good side. He's rich. I am not coming, nor am I having a relationship with her. She started crying and begging for forgiveness, but it felt like crocodile tears to me. After she left, she kept texting me, trying to get me to change my mind. On the day of the wedding, she texted that she was going to leave an empty seat for me, and that I was welcome anytime if I changed my mind. I still didn't go. Rob is mad at me, saying I ruined his daughter's wedding and made her cry, that all she wanted was me there, and that this was a chance to fix our family. Mike, who is also in NC with her, is on my side. Verdict. NTA. Update. So I would like to clarify a few things. Sarah's relationship with Mike is NC because she couldn't accept his decision to cut Kate off. At first, Mike didn't support Sarah and Kate, but I sat them both down. I told them that both of them have very different relationships with Kate. Mike remembers Kate as an addict, while Sarah only remembers clean Kate, and both of them are entitled to their view of Kate. Mike accepted this and was okay with Sarah Kate, but Sarah couldn't accept it. She couldn't reconcile addict Kate with clean Kate, so she refused to believe Mike and downplayed a lot of this trauma. Sarah said things like, "It wasn't that bad. It was not her fault. She was sick. She gave you life. You owe her," etc. By the time Sarah was 19, their relationship had become one and is now one. Kate also couldn't accept this and blamed me for Mike's not wanting to talk to her. Regarding the wedding, Sarah reached out to me 3 months before the wedding, even though they had been engaged for a year, saying she wanted to come over. We said yes, and she came with her fiancé, whom we didn't even know existed. Apparently, they had been together for 3 years. When I say she apologized, I meant she said, "I am sorry you feel that way," which to her was an apology, but to me it's not. She also referred to me as dad's wife, as in, what would people say if my dad's wife isn't there? Not even stepmom. Dad's wife. She also mentioned her paternal grandfather a lot, and how angry he would be. In the 2 months leading up to the wedding, she texted me to change my mind. But all she talked about was, the wedding will be ruined, Grandpa will be mad, etc. Once the wedding happened, she blocked me everywhere. I found out today that her fiancé blocked me too, even though I don't follow him. I only messaged him on Instagram because he has a public profile, but I have been blocked. Same thing with Facebook, even though we aren't friends on there. She clearly wasn't genuine in her attempts to reconcile. And even if she was, it doesn't mean I am obligated to respond. She was 18 when she stopped calling me mom, and she was 19 when she went to NC with Mike and doubled down on her decision. A decision she has held on to for 6 years total. She made her choice. Just because she's young doesn't make her entitled to forgiveness or a relationship with me. Third story. My entitled cheating father wanted to show off his new wife after divorce and make my mom's life more miserable at my wedding, so I uninvited him. Now, his affair partner lashed out on me and my mom, so I cut ties with them both. So my dad has always been a very show-off person. Announcements about grades, telling everyone how great his daughters are doing, and telling off my sister for having a job he can't show off. When he divorced from my mom, he was a good parent for a while, and then he met Eva. Eva is way younger, has had a lot of work done, and used to send him flirty messages when he was still married. They got married very early on in the relationship because they've known each other for ages. She told him not to text us too much because we are adults. She checks his phone all the time. She forbade him from seeing us on Christmas or St. Stephen's Day because he needed to be with his new family, and it would have been disrespectful to her for him to see his ex-wife. And she's overall been an absolute nightmare, and he follows everything she tells him to do. Now I'm getting married and told my dad he's invited, but she's not. I've met the woman once, and I don't like her. Plus, I know my father isn't a great person, and he'd be making jabs at my mom about being older than Eva, etc. To make it fair, my mom's boyfriend is also not invited, although he's a sweetheart. My dad's answer to my invitation has been to pretend nothing is happening. I sent him a save the date, and he sent me a thumbs up emoji. He hasn't asked me one question about the wedding, not even the venue, even though he told me shortly before meeting Eva that he was looking forward to me and my sister getting married and how excited he was. Myself and my fiancé are from different religions and cultures, so everyone's had lots of questions about how we are handling that. It turns out he hasn't told Eva I'm getting married, and he hasn't told anyone else, so he is just planning to say he has a work trip and come to the wedding. I don't actually think he's going to show up. I think he will say he is going to, and then not show up at the last minute. But my sister thinks he'll show up with her and make a whole scene because he told her Eva has just as much right to be there as your mom. Has anyone else dealt with something similar? Do I need a backup to walk me down the aisle? Relevant comments. Sailor Spiro. I just want to point out that your dad is in an abusive relationship. His new wife is cutting him off from his family and his support system so she can have more control over him. He probably won't be allowed to go to the wedding because she's not invited. And he probably wouldn't have been allowed to even if she was. Your dad is an arse all on his own. But I think it's important to recognize that he's still capable of being abused and that it's happening. OP. Yes, they both stink. He has always been a cheater at least 3 other women during the span of 10 years that we have evidence of. And I think no evidence he was cheating on my mom with her. So that's why she's constantly monitoring his phone and not allowing him to leave the house. We told him not to marry her and that her behavior is very concerning. But he seems very blind. Grumpus Smiler. It sounds like he wants to come. And he knows the only way his coming without his wife is possible is if he lies about it. He's risking getting caught to be able to go, which speaks volumes about their relationship. But if she checks his phone, you're causing further risk of her finding out if you keep messaging him about the wedding. Stick to phone calls so there's no record. I hope he can make it and there's no drama. OP. I rang him the first time to tell him I was getting married, and then sent him the save the date the second time, asking if he was coming. I didn't know that he hadn't told her at the time. I've no idea why the wife wouldn't let him go to his daughter's wedding, though she's as amazing as he says, on why his mother's boyfriend is not invited. There's far more drama if I include him and exclude Eva. It's not worth the headache. He will for sure not show up if I invite my mom's boyfriend and not his wife. My mom understands that, even though my dad is not the best dad ever, I still want him there. They aren't together that long, so she's okay with her boyfriend staying at home. Plus, he can stay with the dogs. And she doesn't have to worry about getting a dog sitter. Most of the family is going as well. So there's nobody to look after them. Update. So it turns out my dad ended up telling Eva about my wedding and telling her that she was invited to the wedding to avoid problems. She got herself a dress, booked a hotel, etc. My dad tried to convince me to invite her. But his biggest selling point was that he thought it'd be an amazing time to introduce Eva to my mom and my mom's whole family. Why would he think my mom wants to meet this woman is beyond me, and that she would feel excluded otherwise. He always rubs in our faces his new family, even calling it his new family. Keeps canceling every dinner he sets up with my sister due to some emergency involving Eva, or tells us to call Eva mom. Both me and my sister are way beyond the point of calling some random mom since we both moved out, and he's being ridiculous. He called me again and again, trying to convince me, and I said no, explaining that I knew the only reason he wanted to bring his wife to the wedding was to upset mom, and that I wasn't going to let the two of them do that. He makes jabs at my mom every time he's around her about how great his new wife is. I thought the whole thing was over until I sent him some information about the wedding. And I guess he started feeling guilty and told us that he booked the flight for Eva as well. And he booked himself on the same flight as my mom, changed his whole flight plans just so he could be on the flight with her, so that my mom and Eva could still meet. He could still rub his new wife in her face and try and screw with my mom's head by putting her down and making comparisons. And then Eva would just go off and shop while he was at the ceremony. I'm not sure if this is true, or if he was going to try and bring her to the wedding and hope she didn't get kicked out. I'm trying to convince my mom to change her flight so he can't get inside her head 12 hours before the wedding. I don't know if I should uninvite him. Relevant comments. Zoe Fiona. OMG yes. What has your mom done to you that you'd facilitate hurting her? Why does he know so many details about your mom's travel plans? OP. She is the main reason I haven't uninvited him yet. She keeps saying I need to have a relationship with him and be more understanding. He knows because he asked, and we figured he was trying to avoid being on the same flight as her. Edit. Wrong word. Update. The wedding has happened. It just took a bit of time to update because it's my life. And it all went south and was too raw to try to write in a coherent way. It still probably won't be super coherent. Spoiler alert. My dad got uninvited. Summary TLDR from previous posts. My dad was acting weird around the wedding. It turns out he told his new wife she was invited when she was not. When it got close to the wedding, I told him to tell her he got his wife a flight with him so she wouldn't feel left out, and then purposefully chose to be on the same flight as my mom so that my mom and his new wife could meet. He has a vindictive streak, so we knew he was trying to upset my mom. Okay, so update. I asked him to change his flight because he had specifically asked me what flight my mom was on, so he could avoid her, he had said. And my mom was flying with my grandpa. so it would have been quite hard to change their flights to avoid him. My dad told me he'd changed flights, and that he'd invent some lie to tell Eva. He also said I was a horrible person for not believing him when he told me that he had not booked the flight out of spite. But he told my mom he booked the flight on purpose so that she could meet his new wife. And what reason would there be for wanting them to meet other than to be in awe? I thought the whole thing was resolved. And my mom was really adamant that she wanted my dad to be there because I don't have a great relationship with him. And she knew it would have meant the end of the relationship if I uninvited him. Fast forward to 2 days after the conversation. My dad rebooked his flight and sent me a message to say he had changed flights. Then that evening he called me. I answered the phone, and I could hear someone screaming down the line. Turns out Eva got her hands on my dad's phone. Read the messages where I asked him to reschedule the flight. And she rang me, shouting down the phone that I am unhinged, I am a horrible person, I am effed in the head. And she said that I am so weird because I'm in my 30s, and I still talk to my parents. This one was really weird, because am I meant to stop at a certain age? And that I'm jealous of the fact that my dad has a new life. I was very calm, and said that I'm sorry she's upset. That the issues around the wedding aren't really related to her directly. And that my dad was trying to upset my mom. I also said my mom's partner is not coming either, so it wouldn't be fair to have her there. She started shouting that my mom was a fat old cow, and I lost it. I absolutely lost it. In this whole thing, my mom has said nothing bad about Eva. I told her I never had any issue with her until now, but that she's a crazy bee who is super controlling, and that I was so glad I never invited her. Then I hung up because by that stage, it had been 2 minutes of her shouting at me, and I didn't feel like there was any point in talking any longer. The whole time this was going on, my dad was in the background, saying feebly, "Oh no, don't be mad at her," while she was shouting down the phone at me. Anyway, the next day, my dad calls me and says that Eva was upset because he didn't tell her about changing the flights, and that I was awful for responding to her like that. He also said, "Do you really think this is my fault?" And I said yes, and he said, "Do you really refuse to take any responsibility? None of this would have happened if you had invited her like I asked you to." And I said, "Does he actually think he has any say in my wedding when he didn't even ask me what type of ceremony I had, never asked to see my dress or get involved in any way, monetary or otherwise?" He asked me if he was still invited, and I said obviously not. He then told me to be careful with what I wrote in my messages to him, because she was monitoring his phone, and I said I'm not speaking to him again, so that won't be a problem. The wedding was good. My mom walked me down the aisle, and there was nobody there to cause drama, so in the end, it all worked out for the best. The whole thing was just a lot more dramatic than I originally thought it would be. We thought he might end up not coming because he was too entangled in his lies. But for sure I did not expect the call I got, and it was very close to the wedding when all the drama happened. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.